my next guest, took his Never Trump sentiments all the way to an independent run for president. With me now is Evan McMullin, independent presidential candidate and former chief policy director for the House Republican Conference. Welcome, sir.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
So you heard what those voters said about Paul Ryan. He's a traitor. They don't like him anymore. He's hurting the country. He's not patriotic. They might be saying the same things about you.
Huh. Well, they can go ahead and do that. Only about 9% of the American electorate voted for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. These are the two most unpopular candidates in modern times from the two major parties. We've got to have better in this country. Millions of Americans are already supporting my campaign with Mindy Finn, and we're only 2 months into this thing. Obviously, for us, it's a shorter run. But we feel, yeah, it's a lot shorter, right? But look, we're providing
Let me go back to that, because Mr. Trump does have a lot of supporters. You know, even in the worst poll you see, he's got 31% support from Republican voters who don't like establishment Republicans like yourself.
Well, I would hardly call myself an establishment Republican, given that I left my role with the Republican Party and launched an independent bid, and I am actively advocating for a new conservative movement and a new generation of leadership in our country.
So you're no longer a Republican?
I haven't been a Republican for many years, actually. I've been a registered independent for as long as I can remember. I'm a conservative. I'm an American first, then I'm a conservative, then I think about party. The Republican Party is conservatism, left conservative principles, the very principles upon which our great nation was founded, the principles that made it the most powerful and prosperous on earth. I'm talking specifically about the truth that all of us are created equal and that we all have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If the Republican Party isn't going to be committed to the fact that we are all equal and that we should have liberty, then it will not be a place for conservatives like me and Mindy Finn and the millions of people who are supporting us.
That said, after this election, what might the Republican Party look like? Because you've long split, right? You have other Never Trump people who still consider themselves Republican, and then you have those who support Mr. Trump who still call themselves Republican and conservative. So what will the Republican Party look like after this election?
Well, I want to make clear that we're opposed to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. It's not just people, the media, and I understand, likes to attach this Never Trump name to us, and I get that. But we're opposed to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Hillary for the usual reasons, Donald Trump for reasons that we've explained quite a bit. What happens to the Republican Party, I think, is not probably very good for it. I don't believe that it's going to be able to make the reforms, or I tend to believe it's not going to be able to make the reforms it needs to survive as a political entity that can offer leadership to this country. Now, I've left the door open a little bit for that, but we saw this after 2012 in less challenging circumstances with those who are supporting Donald Trump empowered now. They're not going to let the Republican Party likely make the changes it needs to make. If that's the case, then this new conservative movement will be even more necessary.
Would you say those Republicans, very conservative Republicans who support Donald Trump, have destroyed the Republican Party?
Oh, I wouldn't describe them as very conservative. Not at all very conservative. A true conservative is dedicated.
Just my core question, have they destroyed the Republican Party?
They have participated in severe damage, in doing severe damage to the Republican Party, but really the Republican leaders are the ones who bear responsibility ultimately. For years, the Republican leaders should have stood up to bigotry and misogyny among some parts of the party. Not all the party. There are plenty of Republicans who are not misogynists, who are not bigots. But there is a part of the Republican base that is that, and that's the uncomfortable truth. It's not easy for us to say, those of us who have been affiliated with the party before, but we've been inside it, we've seen it, and you see it playing out with Donald Trump here. So to change that, I think, is a generational challenge that America doesn't have time for. We need something new.
So I want to ask you about the leadership, because you brought that up. Paul Ryan, he's kind of gone underground. We haven't heard from him. He says he's not going to defend Donald Trump anymore, but he hasn't withdrawn his endorsement. So is that for the good of the Republican Party in your mind, or is that cowardly?
No, I mean, look, I think Paul Ryan is a statesman, and we are fortunate to have him as Speaker of the House. He's trying to protect the Republican majority in the House. I understand that. But there's a bigger thing happening here, which is the empowerment of a white supremacist, white national movement in the country that is enormously destructive to the Republican Party. So while he tries to save the House, which I hope that he will, and I think that's a worthy goal, it also allows for other things that are maybe on a bigger problems to move forward. But it's not just Paul Ryan. I mean, it's Priebus, it's so many others. It's Republican members of Congress across the board, and not all of them. Some of them have spoken out against Trump. Few of them, however, have said what they're for. If not for Trump, who are they for? And few for that. That's what I'm talking about.
Going back to the white nationalist thing, do you feel that white nationalists have infiltrated the Republican Party?
Well, Donald Trump has certainly empowered the white nationalist, white supremacist movement, absolutely, and he's brought them into the Republican base. I think some of that existed even before him, not as organized and not as overtly, but he identified it and was able to capitalize on it and is capitalizing on it now. And that's why I'm calling on Republican leaders to, at least now, we're only 3 weeks away from the election. You've seen the truth about Donald Trump if you couldn't see it before. Now's the time to stand up and repudiate this, and repudiate his misogyny and his bigotry. And if you can't do that now, if you won't do that now before November 8th, if you won't stand up for Americans, then what business really do you have leading this country? And I think that's the question they have to answer.
Evan McMullin, thank you so much for joining me this morning.